I want to get Michelle Peterson is going to be coming up next. Michelle actually lives in the state of Illinois. Team Iowa, we dropped our boundaries and our borders a long time ago regarding who can be on this team. We're not going to be limited to that. In fact, I see Team Iowa probably becoming a regional team as we grow. We have a gentleman here who's from South Dakota who wanted to join Team Iowa because there's not a team there. There's not a team in Illinois. Illinois is what we refer to as a feral state. What does that mean? Well, I think you all know what's going on in Illinois, primarily in the cities. As soon as you get out of the cities, downstate and whatnot, it's not quite like that. But South Dakota, Nebraska, North Dakota, for the most part, there's more conservatives or people who think like we do, and we want to collaborate with them, and even in states like Illinois. So Michelle, if she'd come up, Michelle accomplished quite a feat. Her son was, I'm not going to tell her whole story, but her son was groomed, and I'll let her explain that in her presentation. And Michelle found out about it and then went to war. And she was successful in getting, and correct me if I'm wrong again, Michelle, please, the very first anti-grooming law passed in the country, in the state of Illinois, of all places. Oh, am I wrong? What?
So we actually used the current grooming law that became a law in 2013 in Illinois and got the very first grooming conviction in the United States. And because I'm an adopted Team Iowa member, I wore this shirt. Typically, I wear this shirt when I present. It says, I was a mama bear before it was cool. So I'm going to have you go ahead and play this video first, because this will really kind of give you a good baseline of what happened to us.
A teenager has been receiving thousands of text messages from a teacher, many sexually explicit, dozens in the middle of the night. You might believe your child would tell you if this happened, but as NBC5's Phil Rogers discovered, that's not always the case.
The story unfolded here in Morris, southwest of Chicago, as middle America as it comes.
He wanted to make a sex video. Put it straight out there.
Andrew Kozik says he had begun texting Stefan Belegno, a teacher here at Morris High School, because he was having trouble on the baseball team. But before long, he says Belegno was offering him money for oral sex.
It started off at $500 and then $1,000 and then $1,500.
But Andrew never told anyone, and no one knew until his mother heard him talking to Belegno on the phone.
He has no business calling you at 11 o'clock at night. That's completely inappropriate.
When she learned the two had been communicating by text message, Andrew's mother went to her computer and logged into the family's account. She found thousands of messages.
I was just sick, because I knew in my heart, I'm like, this isn't just regular text messaging.
The family went to police, who searched Andrew's phone and found nearly 6,000 messages between the two. But only about a tenth of those could be recovered. And indeed, they are troubling. We can't read some of the more graphic messages, but among the more benign, the teacher writes, "When does the kissing begin? Icky," the student says. "How about if we just go at it and not video it?" the teacher declares. And on another occasion, "When you're 18, we can give each other everything."
Sometimes males to bond with males are crude.
Raymond Wigel is Belegno's lawyer. He insists the teacher was only trying to help Andrew through a bullying incident on the baseball team.
You say that these text messages do not indicate criminal activity. They certainly indicate stupidity for a teacher to be sending these messages.
Absolutely.
Wigel says he and his client concede bad judgment, but they point to the thousands of other texts no one read, as well as huge gaps in the transcripts.
There's a stupid intent, but there was not an evil intent to have sex with this young man.
I don't care what context you put it in. When you offer somebody money for sex, that's solicitation.
So why didn't Andrew tell someone? Records show at one point he even told a DCFS investigator the teacher's messages had not crossed the line.
Why'd you tell him?
I didn't want to lose his job. I didn't want him to get in trouble.
Belegno was found guilty of indecent solicitation of a minor and unlawful grooming. He is to be sentenced next month.
I want him to have to register as a sex offender. The jail time would just be icing on the cake.
Michelle Peterson says she and her son wanted to talk to us to stress the importance of reporting incidents like this. 18 of these texts were after midnight, 15 after 3 a.m. The Grundy County State's Attorney says he believes it's a cautionary tale about giving children digital technology this Christmas without firm guidelines on how it will be used.
Right?
NBC5 investigates.
Just hit the arrow
Imagine
again. There you go. So this was back in 2010. It took us 3 years to get this guy convicted. This is a very long story, but I'm going to shorten it up to save us some time here. But you can go on my website, and there's an interview on there that I did with And We Know with LT, and it's probably the most all-inclusive interview that I've done, and tells you everything that happened and how God's hand has been all over this from the very beginning. And I just didn't realize it. So this guy ended up doing 30 days in jail. He had to register as a sex offender for only 10 years, so as of May of last year, he's no longer in the sex offender registry. He can never teach again, which was my main goal, and he paid a $2,700 fine. Don't advance it yet. So what ended up happening is we ended up in counseling for a very long time. My son was 15 when he started texting him. This teacher was 34. And for you men out there, this is bad enough for a woman, but when this happens to a boy, they don't want to come forward and say anything. So my son, even at 31, said he would have never told me had I not overheard that conversation. So the biggest thing I'm going to tell you parents is if you have a gut feeling that something is wrong, it's wrong. Go with it and let the authorities try to figure it out. That being said, also some of the research I've done in the last few years, there are people at high levels that are involved in this. There are people at low levels that are involved in this. Our state's attorney wanted me to just go away. So this wasn't enough for just one kid. I had to have conversations with my son, 16 years old, about suicide and that none of this is worth taking his life over. That is a conversation you need to have with your kids if you find out that something like this is happening. It's a tough conversation to have, but you have to do it. He didn't want to come forward, and I sent him to bed one night, and I said, this is no longer about us anymore, because you aren't the first person that he's done this to, and if somebody would have taken care of this before us, we wouldn't be going through this now. I said, this is about the kids across the street and the 4 that live down the street. If something happens to one of them, how do you face their parents knowing that you could have done something about it? I said, God put this in our laps for a reason, and we had to take care of it, so now it's our job. And so he went to bed that night, and I stayed up watching vigil over his room because, again, I was afraid of what he might do. I wasn't sure about his mental capability at the time. And got up the next morning, he said, okay, I'm not doing this for you, and I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for the kids across the street and the kids down the street. So I said, okay, let's go, game on. So then we start to go forward, and because my son knew that I would check his phone intermittently throughout the week, he would delete the text messages when they came in, which is why I never saw one of over 6,000 messages. The other thing, too, is take your kids' phones from them at night. They don't need them at night. If they say that they need it for the alarm clock in the morning, buy them an alarm clock, right? If I would have had his phone, I would have seen those messages coming in the middle of the night, and I would have caught this guy. So know that there are things that you can do to help prevent this and stop this from happening. Have those conversations with your kids. Know what games they're playing online, because these predators are on the other side of those games. They're on the other side of the gaming systems. While the phones are great and they open the kids up to the world, unfortunately they open the world up to the kids as well. And they have no idea who's on the other side of that phone or on the other side of that gaming system. So it took us, like I said, 3 years to get this guy convicted, and I ended up having to get the Secret Service involved, and it was through a friend of mine. He was on a pedophile task force. I told him my story. He said, Michelle, this is too much work for just one kid. They want you to go away. I said, but it's my kid. And for those of you who don't know me, I don't really take no for an answer very well, and I'm very competitive, and I was not going to let them win. And so he gave me 2 business cards, and he said, I want you to keep one, take one down to your state's attorney's office, and you tell them if they don't have the messages off his phone in the next 7 days, you're going to turn over the feds. He goes, I'll have them off there in 15 minutes. They had his phone for about 8 months. This teacher was still getting paid on paid administrative leave, and we couldn't get the messages off the phone. But after I gave them that message, lo and behold, we had the messages back 3 days later. So, which tells me they probably had them the whole time. We then had a conversation in the courthouse, in one of the conference rooms, huge conference table. My husband and I are on one side, and 2 assistant state's attorneys on the other, and they had a stack of papers in front of them. And up until this point, we're almost a year after I overheard that conversation, nothing has happened to this guy. They actually denied a subpoena for his cell phone, denied a subpoena for his computer, denied a subpoena for anything at his house or at the school. So my husband, who is my son's stepfather, is with me, and they told me they didn't think they had enough to go on. I said, are those the messages sitting there in front of you? And they said, yes. I said, can I look at them? And they both looked at each other like they weren't expecting that. And I said, well, here's the deal. I said, it's my property. The phone's my property. So I'm leaving here today with both of those things if you're doing nothing with them. So they let me have the messages to look at them, and as I'm flipping through, tears are dripping from my face because everything is in there that we needed. There were gaps in the transcripts. They said that they didn't think they could do anything because there's too many gaps in the transcripts. While there were gaps, everything that was in this video was in the transcripts. Offering him the money, wanted to make a video with him, refer to his body part as my little guy, am I ever going to get to see the little guy, this sort of thing. And things that are, even worse. So I pushed the messages back very slowly. I've been pretty compliant up until this point, never really been in trouble, never had a trafficking ticket, so I didn't know how things worked. And I got up and I slammed my hands on the table and I said, you've got to be kidding me. And that's where this came into play. Because while during COVID, all the mama bears were stepping up and they had the little cute mama bear and the cub falling behind, that is not what you look like when you're fighting for your children. This is what you look like. And if you don't look like this, then you're not fighting hard enough. So they were telling me I needed to calm down. And I said, I do not need to calm down. You need to do your job. Yes. So then I asked to meet with the actual state's attorney, and of course he wasn't available. So I called at 8:01 the next morning, said who I was, and I needed to meet with him that day. They said he wasn't available. I said, that's fine. I'm going to come down and pick up all of my stuff. I'm going to take you to the Illinois state's attorney. He called me back himself personally 15 minutes later, said he could meet with me that afternoon. So we had a nose-to-nose conversation that afternoon, and that set off a tumultuous relationship between the two of us. And I said I was stuck with him as my attorney, and that's how I felt, and he better start doing his job. So fast forward, nothing is really happening, and the principal calls me of the school and asks me to come back down. He said, listen, I've been trying to get them to subpoena his personnel file, and they're not doing this. And so I went back down to the state's attorney's office and said, can you subpoena the personnel file? And he's like, I don't know what could possibly be in there that we would need. I said, what skin is it off of your back? Can you just get it? So he subpoenas the personnel file. The school has me come down. The attorneys at the school won't release it to them until I come down and sign off on it because they use the HIPAA law because my son's a minor and his name is all over this personnel file. So I go down there. Now the principal had been a counselor before, so he had had a meeting with the superintendent, the teacher, and the union rep before they let him go on paid administrative leave. He flat out asked him, did you ever offer Andrew money for sex? Did you want to make a video with him? Did you refer to his body part as my little guy? And in there, he said he put his head down, shook his head in affirmation, and said yes. And he signed it. I'm like, we got him. I go back down to the state's attorney's office. I told him what was in there. And he said, why'd they let you see it? I said, because of the HIPAA law. And he said, they didn't have to do that. I said, honestly, I think they let me see it because they knew I was getting nowhere with you and you weren't doing your job. And if he's not arrested in the next 7 days, I'm going to have every major news station on your front lawn. So he waited the full 7 days before he indicted him. And then we went status hearing after status hearing after status hearing. This went on for about a year. And then we voted in a new state's attorney. So January of 2013, the new state's attorney comes in. He says, I think we're going to have to take a plea deal because there's been so long. They're going to say you can't remember everything. There's holes in the transcripts. And I was livid after fighting this hard, right? Now this is where the grace of God comes in because we go to court in August of 2013. This guy out of nowhere decides he wants to take it to trial. Everyone's like, what? They told me that never happens. He wanted to take this to trial, and not only that, he ticked off the judge because the judge said, this young man was home from school, because at this point my son's 19. He already had finished his first year of college, and he was going to school in New Jersey. He's like, now we have to bring him home and to go to trial. And we could have done that this summer. And so we leave there. Not only does he want to take it to trial, but he opts for a bench trial with the same judge that he just ticked off. Thank you, Jesus, right? So then we meet with the state's attorney and his first assist. They said there's a new law that just came into play in Illinois just last month in July of 2013, and it's a grooming law. So for those of you who don't know what unlawful grooming is, it's whereby somebody who is older goes after somebody who's younger, and they try to entice them, and they try to befriend them so that they trust them to do something nefarious to them, typically to have sex with them. But not only do they groom the child, they groom the family, and they groom the community as well. So this guy had gotten a teacher's award just a couple weeks before I went into the principal's office to tell him what was going on. So that's the other thing, is they make it look like they're like the stellar person in the community so that you will never think about going after them. I'm also a physical therapist. I was in his home treating a family member for home health physical therapy at the time he started texting my son. I was also coaching softball at the same high school. So he knew me as a parent, a colleague, and a healthcare provider, never thinking I would ever go after him. So we go to court in October of 2013, and then we get the very first grooming conviction in the United States. Yep. And my son, who I said is 31 now, in and out of counseling ever since then. He never had been touched by this guy, but still profoundly affected by everything that happened, right? Questioning himself, questioning everything going forward. He's now in a good place. He's doing pretty well at this point. So just that being said, I just want you to know that he's doing okay. Yeah. And that's the other thing, a statistic that was told to me is that 79% of the kids whose parents fight for them, they will become productive members of society. So that's the bottom line, is fight for your children and believe them. So what ended up happening is I ended up meeting a trafficking investigator named Amy Coelho at a Reawaken event in Nashville in January of 23. She started telling me about some cases she'd been working on. One of them was a Luz del Mundo case, and is one of the biggest trafficking cases in the United States. It's a church cult where the women in the church prepare the kids in the church for the men in the church. 74 different countries, and then she started telling me about a Larry Nassar gymnast case that she had. So I said, I'm going to tell her about my measly case, right? So I started to tell her, and she says, hold on, are you from Illinois? And I said, yes. And she said, when was that? I said, 2013, 2014. She grabbed my arm and got tears in her eyes, and she said, I need to get a picture with you and send this to my team. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, we use your case for every trafficking case we bust because we have to prove the grooming in order to prove the trafficking, and you have the only grooming conviction in the United States in 10 years. So we were both a hot mess, but then I'm like, why do we have the only grooming conviction in 10 years? Because this is happening everywhere. So she then thought that it was because they were taking plea deals. So she's like, we need to get a law put in place where they can't take a plea bargain if they are charged with grooming. And so we put trafficking in there as well. And I wanted to amend the sex offender registry to make it lifelong and not 10 years. Make it include places of businesses that are privately owned, that cater all or in part to children. So places like Chuck E. Cheese and Dave & Buster's that didn't exist when that law was written. So this would include libraries, movie theaters, virtual playgrounds for these guys. They can go in there willy-nilly, just so you know, if they're on the sex offender registry. So that's what part of this is going to be. And we're trying to amend our current grooming law in Illinois. It's going to be called Andrew's Law. And then that we're hoping will go across the country. So what we ended up doing, got connected with Mary Flynn O'Neill and General Flynn through the Reawaken and with America's Future. Ended up working with a paralegal out of Florida named Allie Hopper. And Allie started looking in their criminal codes, soon realized that they didn't have a grooming law to amend. So then we took a step back. We found out that Illinois was the only state that had a grooming law. So now it's my assignment from God that we have to get a grooming law put in place in all 50 states. So that's what I'm working on currently. Allie was successful in Florida. I had gone down and spoken at a GOP meeting down there, and there was a rep and senator there who ended up sponsoring the bill and heard my story. And then Emily Peterson, who you know here is the mama bear in Iowa, she connected me with Mark Thompson, told Mark my story. I got Allie connected with Mark. We helped him write the grooming law for Iowa. Iowa then has a grooming law because of the Florida law. That was all in a matter of weeks of each other. So when Florida, then Iowa, then Arizona had an issue, they contacted Florida and Iowa, used all three laws, and then they created a law about a month later. So now Arizona has a grooming law. See how this works? And then in Georgia, there was a mom there whose daughter had been abused and subsequently raped by YMCA gymnastics coach. She'd been trying for 3 years to get a grooming law in place, could not get it put in place. After I had done a podcast with somebody from Georgia, she hooked me up with that mom, and she then got the grooming law to fall in Georgia because the other 3 states had just fallen. So then fast forward to this year, and I have my cousin in Montana whose daughter had been, she was getting texted through Snapchat. She ended up buying a Bark phone for her. She got the messages on her phone that went into her daughter's phone, got alerted. She ends up taking it ultimately to the FBI. After taking it to the police and the sheriff, they said that she just needed to be a better parent. Like, take it to your local FBI agent. So he had been trained by ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children, and he took the phone, and it was two people that were texting her from Iowa, and she was in Montana. So I said, you need to get a rep or a senator to sponsor this grooming bill in your state. So lo and behold, as God would have it, her boyfriend's cousin is a state rep in Montana, and she's a Democrat, and she took this and she wanted to run with it, but she wasn't on the proper committee. She handed it over across the aisle to a Republican, and the Republican took it to committee, and they got it to pass unanimously in both the House and the Senate in Montana, and it is the law that needs to be model legislation throughout the entire country. Part of this law is if somebody is 18 years old and grooms a child 12 years of age or younger, it's 100 years in prison, no chance of parole for the first 25. If they get out at 25 years, it's a lifelong satellite surveillance. These are the laws that need to pass in this country to save these kids. You can go to the next slide. So what parents need to know about grooming is that predators don't just snatch kids off the street. They slowly earn their trust with parents. You can take pictures of these slides so that you have these. We're going to kind of go through them quickly. Most grooming happens by a friend. It's not the white van syndrome. It's your neighbor. It's your family member. It's a teacher. It's clergy. It's somebody that you know typically. It's very rarely somebody that's rolling up on your street. Next slide. And then next steps the predators use, they'll target a child to gain their trust, isolation, creating secrecy, desensitization, and abuse. So nothing good is ever done in secret. So make sure you tell your kids that if a parent or if any other adult talks to them about keeping this a secret, they need to come to you immediately. You can find all this also on my website. Warning signs in children, sudden secrecy about new relationships, friends, or online activity, unexplained gifts of money or devices, withdrawal, anxiety, mood swings. I couldn't wake my son up to go to school. He wasn't sleeping at night. He was irritated. He was withdrawn, staying in his room. Resting heart rate of 120, kept going down to the nurse's station. Me being me, I'm like, send him back to class. He's fine, right? And I ended up taking him to a cardiologist, and he was fine, but didn't realize all of this was going on. Had I known these signs then, I could have done something more about it at the time. And then warning signs in adults, excessive interest in specific child, always volunteering with them, requesting. This guy, this teacher, volunteered for everything at that school. That's why he got that teacher's award. He was volunteering for everything. He also taught in it was like a shops class, so he was around boys the whole day. So just know that these are things you have to watch for. They do target single parents too. I think he thought I was still unmarried at the time. And I always tease, because my son's very nice, very kind-hearted. I said he had the right kid, he had the wrong family. So, and then online grooming, we talked about this a little bit. So just make sure you're having these conversations with your kids. Know what they're doing online at all times. And this is the parental controls you can get. This is also on my website. I reached out to Bark. They did give me an affiliate link, so I'm just going to throw that out there. Anything that you buy in this Bark app, will get 10% to help fund what I'm doing, because I fund all this myself, so to travel and all of those things. But that QR code will take you right to Bark, and you can either get an app or a phone. Make sure you're telling all of your brothers and sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents. Make sure you talk about this with your kids. This has a constant GPS on there too that can't be turned off. So while you can turn off like Life 360, this cannot be turned off if you have the Bark phone. And next one. Why Andrew's Law matters. Laws must match reality. Grooming is a deliberate, calculated crime, not a lesser offense. So we should not be allowing plea bargains for this. Parents need to know that under Andrew's Law, predators can't plea bargain grooming into something minor. They'll be held fully accountable. And then this is what you'll also hear. You can't tell me anything from the kids, right? Or you can tell me anything without getting in trouble. This is what you need to tell your kids. If someone asks you to keep a secret, show me right away. No adult should ever ask you for pictures or to keep things private from me. I will always believe you and protect you. This is very important for the kids to hear. And this again is Andrew's Law and what it all entails. Take a picture of that if you want. And then plea bargains. Why plea bargains are unlawful, right? So I don't think anybody should be able to take a plea bargain, especially when it comes to children. It's just a way of them to clear out the courtroom. So this is a reason why I feel like we should allow plea bargains. I was told by a state's attorney that plea bargains are constitutional. So can you show me in the Constitution where it says that you get a plea bargain? Of course he couldn't. So, and then this is my website. So, and that is a picture of my son Andrew. But you can go to that website, and at the top there's tabs up here, and all of those things we're taking pictures of. It says what parents need to know about grooming. All of that information is in there. If you go under the Andrew's Law tab, all of the laws are in there. Our conviction is in there. The Illinois law is in there, and the current bills for Andrew's Law on the House and the Senate side in Illinois are also in there. This is the kid that I fought for. People forget that they start off as babies, right? They see them as these young adults, and they forget that this is who we raised. So don't forget who you're raising and who they were, and know that this guy wanted to change my kid forever and wanted to corrupt him and take away his innocence. And so this is who he is now. He's my hero. He was in the Marine Corps, got out right as they were pushing the jab on everybody, and he tapped out. So I think he would have stayed in for much longer, but that's what drove him out. So that's the end of my presentation. If anybody has any questions.
No, perfect. Thank you. Who was affected and said, I'm not going to take this anymore. She drew a line in the sand and made things happen. And that's the message we're trying to convey here today to all of you. We're force multiplying Team Iowa. So we're going to take a break, but before we do, we're going to take a short break just to give you guys, because we are running a little behind. I hope it's okay. Let everybody stretch, but I want all Team Iowa members to please come up here. Please now, like now. Come, please. Everybody get off your backsides and get up here, right here. That's an order. Sounds like Major Prather, don't I? He talks to me like that, just so you know. Team leaders, Rod, our team leader from Oklahoma is right there. Rod, please stand up. Just hold on. Right there, okay. We've got other team, we've got our XO from Team America headquarters right there from Oklahoma. He just took over the role. So yeah, come on up, guys. I'll wait till everybody gets here. Come on, Mike, you were an athlete. Hustle. So, I'm not sure, is Jamie up here? Everybody here? Yes. So this is, as you guys can see, we are not hundreds, all right? This is our team. Now we've got some people here from South Dakota, Illinois, but this is the group of people that are making this happen, okay? And I just want everybody to recognize that. We're small but mighty, okay? We're small but mighty. Last comment before we're going to take like a 5 or 10 minute break, okay? The boss is telling me. Stacy is my assistant team leader, okay? She's up next, so we're going to take a short break, then Stacy's coming on. Lunch will get prepared, but what we're going to do is once lunch gets here and all set up, we're going to have you all go grab your lunches and come back and sit and eat while we keep moving, okay? I want to make one comment. Human trafficking is not political. It is not left. It is not right. It's not Democrat. It's not Republican. I don't want to hear that from anybody. It's human. It's a human issue. And the people that are dealing in human trafficking, I don't want to take any of Stacy's thunder, are demons. They have no compunction about what they're willing to do to another human being. And I can tell you, since we got involved in this and what I've learned through Stacy and many others, part of the Team America group, is there's no end to the darkness of this and the horrific things that are being done. I won't go into detail.